I'm Lisa Stone, and you are listening to Season 8 of Parenting Aces. Welcome to Season 8 of Parenting Aces Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week we are going to be talking college recruiting with Duke Women's Associate Coach Matt Manasse. Matt played college tennis himself at both USC and Purdue. He went to work for Babolat right out of school and then got into college coaching and is at his third gig since graduating from college. He has been at Duke since 2017 and came in as an assistant coach and then was named associate head coach just this past December. So he is not that far out of college tennis himself as a player and has some really, really helpful information to share with all of us regarding recruiting, the questions that our kids need to be asking these coaches when they're talking to them about a spot on a college team, how to choose a school, what to look for on visits, how to transition from college to pros. I mean, we really touched on a variety of topics. So hopefully you guys will find this podcast episode super helpful as your own children are starting to think about college recruiting or perhaps are going through it right now. So for those of you who find the podcast helpful, who find the articles on ParentingAces.com helpful, we are donor supported and appreciate every little donation, no matter how big or small. It really does make a difference. So if you are so inclined, you can go to ParentingAces.com, click on the donate button on the top right of the page, and we thank you so much for your continued support. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's conversation with Coach Matt Manasse. Matt Manasse, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We've been trying to get this going for a couple of weeks, so I'm glad we finally found a time that worked.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about everything tennis.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always love to have my guests start out by giving the audience a little bit of background on your life in tennis. So why don't you tell us about your junior and college years and how you got to be the associate women's coach at Duke?
Yeah, I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is not a tennis hotbed in the U.S. And when I was around 13, 14, I moved to Florida to Everett Academy. So I did my high school there at Boca Prep and did the Florida junior tennis circuit until I was recruited to go to USC my freshman year. I did transfer from that. I know we talked a little bit about that off air. I transferred to Purdue University for my last 3 years. And upon graduation, I actually really wanted to be a tennis agent and represent players, but I ended up going to Babolat, where I worked for 2 years as the junior sponsorship coordinator and kind of got my feet wet in the manufacturing world and business world of tennis. And then it hit me one recruiting event where I went to NCAAs in Illinois, where I really missed kind of being on court and being on that end of the sport. And I got back into coaching, where I went to Wisconsin for a couple of years, then Oklahoma State, and now here at Duke.
And on the women's side the whole time?
Yes, on the women's side the whole time.
Interesting. And so what drew you to the women's side of the game?
Well, growing up, I mean, in Erie, my first coach and my coach all through, until high school was a female coach, Kelly Irvin Masler. I have 2 older sisters as well. So I kind of guess I've grown up around a lot of females and have had a lot of strong female influences. So I didn't think coaching women would be anything different. I was comfortable in that realm. So, and I was always a big believer at kind of keeping your brand strong. I went to USC, went to Purdue, worked at Babolat. I didn't want to kind of go the mid-major route. Wisconsin was a strong name, a strong brand, and it felt like a good opportunity to get into the game in a Big Ten university, Power 5 university, and I really liked everything that Wisconsin stood for. So it was a good place to start.
And talk about that time where you were making the decision to transfer after your freshman year? Because I think this is something that we don't talk about all that much in the realm of junior and college tennis, but transferring is a pretty common event that happens on both the men's and the women's side of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, it's not an easy decision. It's not a thing to take lightly. I think when these kids are transferring, it's I look back at it now, and I was very stressed during those times, and I laugh about it. I'm like, how could I have been so stressed? But when you're 18 years old and you're thinking about moving cross country after 1 year in college, first of all, it's a big deal. So, but to get back to the main question, I think these kids need to really go into the recruiting process knowing what their role is going to be when they get to university, where they're probably going to play in the lineup, really do their homework, ask a lot of questions, know the teammates that you're going to be on the team with, so that you know the full picture going into it. I think, looking back at it now, I'm 30 years old. I can look at it with a little more clarity. I was a little bit over my head at USC my freshman year at that time with where I was, maturity wise. And it was something that was hard to handle. And I would have done things a little bit differently, but at the same time, I ended up transferring to Purdue, and it was something that worked out well, being, on the East Coast, closer to family, somewhere where I could, play a little bit more in the lineup. And I think things worked out.
Yeah. And so you talk about asking questions during recruiting, and this is a topic that I've addressed, a number of times in the podcast and in articles on ParentingAces.com. But now that you're on the coaching side of it, what are some of the questions that you wish you had asked and that you're shocked that recruits aren't asking when they come to visit Duke?
I think that's a good one. I mean, I wish kids would ask more, like, how hard it really is. I mean, they don't know is the problem. And I think it's up to the coaches, honestly, to kind of educate the kids during this process, and also their coaches and parents. Because I think a lot of kids come in, like the recruiting process as a whole, the coaches are telling everyone how great they are. And they're boosting their self-esteem because they're trying to get these kids to come to this program. And then they get there and it's like, wow, I have to put in way more hard work than I did in juniors. The coach is going to be way more honest with me than, my coach was in junior tennis, because, now they're in charge as opposed to maybe some of these parents paying the coaches. I don't think these kids get to know the coaches as well as they should. I mean, even the kids we recruit, sometimes it can be a pretty quick recruiting process, and they fall in love with the school and the tennis program and all of this. But, it is tough to get to know these kids as well as you'd like during the recruiting process. It's just not going to happen as easy as it is when they're on campus and you're around them for 20 hours a week. But I think it is up to the kids to try to do their homework the best they can, and talk to current players on the team and say, how does Coach X, how does he run practice? How does he coach you guys? Is it in a positive manner? Is it negative reinforcement? What's the conditioning like? I mean, there's a lot of questions I think that these kids need to ask so that when they're there's no surprises. Because if they come in knowing what to expect, I think it goes a long way to kind of getting up to speed quickly.
When you made the decision to transfer to Purdue, was it an issue mainly of playing time, or was it the intensity of the practices? Was it the intensity of the academics? Although Purdue and USC, I guess, are pretty much on par academically. Yeah. I mean, what was it that made you feel like you were not in the right place?
I think it was just playing time. I mean, I wanted to be at a program where I could contribute and get in the lineup and have my opportunities, both in the fall and in the spring, and feel that I was a crucial member of the team. And I think when I went to Purdue, there was a new coach there, Tim Madden was there. He recruited me along with Troy Hahn, who I had known from junior tennis. He had been coaching at Everett Academy actually for a little bit while he started his pro career. So it was a familiar face, someone who had seen me growing up, knew where I was from, had coached me a little bit. So it was definitely a playing time. I think, I wanted to play. I didn't want to just practice for 4 years.
And had you not asked that question, or, I mean, how did you get there, and not get to play? Like, what were the circumstances that led to that? I think it's important for people to understand, like, this stuff happens all the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't have any family members that played, NCAA athletics, like D1 college sports, anything. My sister dove at Johns Hopkins, but that's a little bit different. And coming in, I was a recruited walk-on essentially at USC, but I was on the same recruiting trip as Robert Farah. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm getting paid to come out here on a recruiting trip. Rob had way better credentials going into it than I did. But in my mind, you're 17, 18 years old and, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to come in, I'm going to be able to handle this. I'm going to be able to fight for my spot. And, the level was probably a little better than I thought for sure. But at the same time, I think, going in, I think coaches already have it in their mind also where you're going to play or where you're not going to play. And I think I played into it a little bit in terms of kind of how comfortable I felt there early on. But yeah, it does happen. I think it's a coach's job as well. Like if we were to recruit a walk-on here at this point, I think it would be pretty clear. And I'd tell them right away, look, you're coming in as a walk-on. It's going to be very hard to make the lineup here. If you do well and we're going to give you all the chances we can in the fall. And if you're beating guys or beating girls, you're going to get these chances. But I think you have to be really upfront with the kids in the recruiting process. Otherwise, if you have a certain expectation and theirs is different, you're obviously going to butt heads, and it's not going to be right for anyone.
Right. Do you remember what your fall was like freshman year? In terms of fighting to get in the lineup?
I do. I just remember, there's various things I remember. I don't think not everyone played fall tournaments. So the whole team wasn't given the opportunity to play fall events. I played a couple like men's opens in the area and stuff like that. But, other than, maybe a doubles event, I didn't play any singles events, like ITA singles events at all. It was just practice sets and all of that. So it was a little bit different than, let's say, my next fall at Purdue, where everyone on the team did play a lot of different fall events.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important question for recruits to ask the college coach, who goes to the fall events? Does everybody go? Right. If, how do you make that decision? What if I don't get to go? Am I still going to have a fighting chance of getting in the lineup?
Right.
And these are questions that as a 17-year-old, it's hard to ask an adult these things, right?
Yeah.
I think intimidating.
I was naive to a lot of it. I just frankly didn't. I didn't know the level of. I didn't know what a top 5 team looked like. I didn't know what top 300 players in the world look like and train with on a regular basis. And I think until you get in it, you don't really know. But it is definitely up to us as college coaches to educate these kids coming up the best we can, because all these kids that we recruit, whether you're at Duke or USC or Purdue or mid-major, anything, whatever kid you're recruiting, for the most part, they're the big fish in their pond. Mm-hmm. They're the best kid, and they come there not really knowing what to expect, and it's an individual sport, and then you get there, and now you're compared to teammates. It's not your private coach anymore. You have 2 coaches for 8 kids, and it's just it's a different vibe for sure.
Right. Well, Matt, what of those lessons that you learned from your own personal college tennis experience have you brought to the table now that you're on the other side as a coach?
I mean, I know the struggles that I had as a player. I understand the moments of pressure, the moments of feeling overwhelmed, and I feel that I'm more able to help these girls through those moments, whether it's on court or off court. I think I'm I like to motivate from a positive standpoint, positive reinforcement, and I just feel that I think a lot of these girls come in and they have so much that they can improve upon, and I just feel that if they can see that and that they know that they can continue to improve over and over, that they can get to a high level. And I think I see some other coaches that kind of put ceilings on players, and they can only play 4 in our lineup. They can only play 6. They're going to purely be a walk-on, and I just don't think that's fair. I think if you really put your effort into these kids and show them that you care, that they can kind of surprise you and go a lot further than they think. And if they can push through some barriers and become tough, that you can have a happy and successful college experience.
So it sounds like you're the type of college coach that is committed to helping your players continue to improve during their time with you at Duke. There aren't, I mean, there are other coaches out there that feel like they just want to recruit finished products. They're not in the tennis development space. They want to just be in the compete and win space.
Yeah. I think it's a sorry to
no, go
cut
ahead.
you off there. I mean, I think it's a fine line. I think, at Duke, we're obviously not, everyone's using UTR now, but back in the tennisrecruiting.net days, we're not going to recruit a 4-star player and all of a sudden expect, that we're going to turn them into a blue chip. Obviously, we are trying to recruit the best possible kids that have had the junior accolades and have done stuff on the pro tour and can do it, but there is still so much more once they get here. We have girls that are top 300 in the world on our team that obviously aren't winning every match, and there's so much they can improve upon to get to the next level. And I think it takes a lot of work. Like the life of a college tennis coach isn't that glamorous. You're on court from 8 in the morning till 4 or 5 in the afternoon or longer at times. Obviously not the entire time, but you're out there with them, feeding balls, hitting with them, working on technique, working on strategy, and it's a lot of, especially on both sides, it's a lot of talking through their mindset, where they are psychologically, and you really have to put a lot of time into it. And I think the coaching now in college is way better than it was, 15 years ago even. But I think there's a lot of coaches that come in and say, okay, we just have to roll the balls out and we're not going to have a lot to do besides that. But it's really a full-time job. It's a full commitment to these players, both on and off the court, to make sure that they're going to improve and enjoy themselves over the course of 4 years.
So if a recruit is looking for a program with a coach that is focused on helping her develop further, what questions can she ask to determine if she's looking even in the right direction? If she's talking to the right schools?
Yeah. I think I would want, if I was a player, I'd want my coach to come visit me wherever I am and watch me practice. I'd want them to talk to my junior coach and ask, what are you guys working on? Where do you see, player X, where do you see her game getting to? What do you think she needs to add in the next couple of years? And kind of have that conversation of, where they're falling short and where they think they need to develop. Because coming in, I think both parties need to know, obviously the goals of the player. Do they want to play pro tennis? Do they just want to be the best college player they can be? But if that's the case, you can still become an amazing player, just having, being the best college player you can be is your goal. But if there's a clear mindset of like, all right, I still have 4 years to improve, and that's my goal, then everyone can be on the same page. I also think a lot of it is on the player. I think some of these players get to school and they don't have a goal of improving. I think some players, they get there and that was their goal, was to get their college scholarship, and they're there just to kind of cash the check and go through. And you need to definitely be aware in the recruiting process of, what kind of player you want there. And it's definitely, it's a hard, recruiting is very hard, and that's why it's getting so competitive across the board.
Well, you guys do a really good job of recruiting and signing American players. I mean, your team is almost entirely American.
Right.
How do you do that? Because, I mean, all the chatter that goes on around, especially on the men's side where there are only 4.5 scholarships, and how tough it is for the U.S. boys to get a piece of that and even, get a spot in the lineup, much less get money.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think to be honest, it's definitely easier at a place like Duke, especially on the women's side, to attract the top American talent. I mean, it's a great academic institution. Historically, we've been very good at tennis, and obviously continue to do so. So it's easy to attract the top American talent at schools like Duke and USC and Cal and Stanford and Michigan and your big brand academic institutions. But at these other schools, I was at Oklahoma State for 2 years, which is obviously a great athletic school, great tennis, and we had a great successful run there. But you're not going to attract the top American kids just because most of them come from a background where their parents are going to say, you need to strive for the best academically that you possibly can. And it's tough to beat. You're not going to beat top tier American kids with second tier American kids. And I think that's what coaches have figured out. And, when you're getting, now the salaries are going up and up on both sides. If you have a coach getting paid, $200,000 a year and their job is on the line, they're not just going to take an American kid for the sake of taking an American kid. They're going to find the best foreigner they can if that's all that's available. I think that's what you're kind of seeing. I think that's the trend. I also think there's a reason for it. Obviously I'm an advocate for American tennis, and I want more Americans to play college tennis. But I think a lot of times you see foreigners coming in, and it's not just their level that's better, because I think a lot of times the level can be the same, but I think mentally they are just a little bit hungrier at times and a little bit more professional in terms of how they prepare for each day. Just little things. And I think the culture overseas is different than it is here. I think a lot of these kids have been told since they were 12 that you're a professional tennis player, this is how you're going to act. And that difference is pretty noticeable once they get to school in their mindset. They're not distracted by a lot of different things in the party environment and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of reasons why coaches are going foreign. I don't think it's obviously right all the time, but there's a reason behind it. That's for sure.
It's funny because I've heard coaches saying that exact thing for years now. That the kids outside the States come in, they're more mature. They're not necessarily better ball strikers, but they handle all of the other stuff better. And it's funny because in my experience, I have seen definitely some of that, but I've also seen the opposite. I've seen the kids coming from overseas who get the scholarship, and like you said, they're just looking to cash the check to pay for school, and that's all they care about, and they jump right into the party scene. So I think I think there is both, and I think we're maybe doing our American kids a disservice by saying that, the international kids are better prepared psychologically or whatever for the college experience. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there are definitely some. And
I think it's also like a culture that has to be set at each program. I mean, obviously you look at Ty Tucker at Ohio State on the men's side, and he has a full American squad and he's had it for years, for 15 years now. They've been, top 5 in the country, top 10 in the country every single year. He runs a no BS type program. It's very cut and dry, and these kids know what to expect coming in. But I think in general, and we can get to this topic in terms of the kind of coaches that these administrations are hiring, I think needs to be better as well.
Well, let's dig into that. What do you mean by that?
If you look across the board, I think on the men's and women's side, you have a lot of administrations just hiring great former players, that were, great at their school, their alma maters, or, they were former pros or X, Y, Z. And, I don't necessarily think that the best player is always the best coach. There's obviously examples of that. Ty was a great player himself, and he's proven to be an unbelievable coach. But I think in football and basketball and all these sports, you have people that, maybe weren't the best player in their sport. They've just been grinding through the coaching ranks for 20 years. They have, a master's degree in psychology. They've really gone through the ranks of earning their stripes and realizing how to build a culture, how to hold kids accountable, how to do all the little things that aren't just the X's and O's. And I think in tennis, we've missed that a little bit because I think administrations, quite frankly, don't care as much. We just, we have a tennis opening and we need to get it filled. And I don't think they really dive into the quality candidates that are out there to fill these positions, because I think if the quality of coaches were better, I think you'd see a quality a college tennis that was better for sure.
Well, you have to admit that the fact that tennis is a non-revenue sport likely plays pretty heavily into that.
For sure.
And, we're not bringing money into the school in their minds, which this is another one of my pet peeves. Like, if you want tennis to bring money into the school, then you need to have teams that will produce alums that are going to donate back to the school, right? So, you look at what Mark Hurd's done at Baylor, and it's just mind-boggling. The man has given millions and millions of dollars to that program. They've got a former national championship coach leading the men's program now. And it's just, it's mind blowing.
If you look, and I think things have changed though. I don't know the exact numbers, but just on the women's side alone, there are many head coaches over $200,000 a year. And I know that's not the multi-million-dollar figures that are in football and basketball, but these are significant amounts of money, and the recruiting budgets are huge. Travel budgets are huge. USC, spent a lot of money to take both their men's and women's programs to Australia. So it's definitely not chump change out there. And I think, Chris Young at Oklahoma State, my former boss, and we had a great 2 years there. He has done an excellent job making sure that tennis is kind of self-sustainable, and, going out and speaking in the community, making sure that the Stillwater community is 100% behind tennis. And he was able to, get donors like the Greenwoods to come in there and build a $17 million facility and also donate to, a big foundation account to help with other things. So I think these departments are pretty short-sighted in how they're looking at tennis, because there's plenty of tennis people out there that want to get behind a good product and that want to see kids do well in school and and have a good experience and be competitive. And in every community, tennis is it's still a wealthy sport. You go to the country clubs, and there's still a lot of lawyers and doctors and and very wealthy businessmen that want to get behind a good product and want to get behind tennis. And if you have coaches that are very charismatic and want to get out in the community, I think tennis 100% can make money, and athletic departments don't even have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. As a young coach, I mean, you said you're 30 years old. You've already spent several years in coaching. How important is it for a coach just starting out to have a mentor to help him or her kind of learn the ropes and develop a coaching style?
That's a good question. For me, I've been coached by a lot of good coaches my entire life. I was, in Florida and kind of over my years at SC, at Purdue, wherever. I mean, you immerse yourself in the tennis world with a lot of good coaches. I had Andy Brandy down at Everett Academy and countless other, names. But I think you learn from how you were coached. One, once you get into coaching yourself, I mean, obviously you learn from both experiences. You learn from the play. I think you learn from the players a lot. I think you have to be open-minded that your players can teach you as well. And I think you learn both from, if you're an assistant coach, you learn both what to do and what not to do from your boss. I've had 3, head coaches now that I've learned from, and you can kind of pick and choose from each one what you think is going to be most beneficial to you once you lead your own program. To be honest, I've never been someone to say, this is my mentor. I look up to them so much. I think, I don't know. I just have never been like that. I always want to bring my own style, but I also respect everyone I've worked with. And I do want to, I think I can learn and have learned a ton from every single person that I've worked with. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, completely. It does. I mean, I was just thinking about the fact that, you come out of school, you go to work for Babolat, which is, a great job, but it's not coaching. And right. Then you take a coaching job, never having coached before.
Correct.
There's no formal training that Correct. College coaches go through. There's no degree. There's no certification that Correct. Designates you as a master college coach. It's a on the job learning experience. And also, as you mentioned, taking your experiences from your years as a junior player and training and your own college experience. But
I mean, one thing I've definitely, and Peter Smith actually said this to me. I remember my freshman year, he said, most of everything in life is about relationships and how you treat people and how you kind of move along. And obviously in the coaching world, I think building relationship with your players, with other coaches is the most important part. I mean, especially, I forget the quote or who said it, but, your players don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Right.
And that's kind of been a big thing for me, in my journey so far. They need to know that you're very committed, that you do care, that you don't care about them just for the wins that they put on the court, but that you care about them as a person and, stuff in their family life and all of that. And I think that's a huge part, but you're right. I mean, I went into Wisconsin not knowing anything about, college coaching and coaching in general, but you learn as you go along. I did a summer working with the USTA during their shadow program, and I got to travel with Kathy Rinaldi for part of the summer, and then ended up going with Ali Risk for the last month and a half of her summer into the U.S. Open. And I just think the more people you're around, and you can see how professionals act and try to do the right thing and kind of stick to your core values, you're going to grow as a person and then obviously as a coach. Because I mean, coaching for me is just about motivating players to be the best they can be. because obviously when you see a player push through something that they didn't think they can get through, that's the reward. Because obviously we're not getting paid extremely well yet, and all of these other things. So I obviously don't have a mentor, but I have a lot of good friends in coaching, and we definitely bounce ideas off of each other all the time. And I think as long as you have a passion for it and care, then you're really going to learn everything you need as you go along.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this a million times. I'm continuously blown away at the camaraderie that exists among college coaches on both the men's and the women's side. And, even when you coach at rival schools, there is a level of respect, a level of, friendship, and I don't even know the words to use with it, but it's so cool to see, especially when you go to like the NCAAs and, all the coaches are there. Or you go to a big recruiting event, like one of the junior slams or nationals or whatever, and see all the coaches hanging out and chatting. And the fact that, a coach may watch a kid and realize that kid's not right for her program, but she'll call another coach and say, hey, I saw this kid that I think would be a great fit for you. And, there's a lot of that goes on in college coaching that I think is pretty unique. So for somebody like you that, in my mind, you're very young, there's a lot of opportunity to watch and learn and absorb. And, as you're making your way up the career ladder in college coaching, which I think is really cool. Let's shift gears a little bit. I want to really talk more about recruiting and this whole notion of PSAs not knowing what they don't know, and how the kids can do better and how the parents can do better through the recruiting process to make sure that they're winding up in a place that's a good fit. Not necessarily the fit, because,
there probably isn't one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I just thinking about it, actually, as we were talking about some other things, I think where the problem lies a lot of times is the fact that both the kid and the coach, the college coach, have one goal in mind in this process, right? We're trying to sign a kid, and they're trying to get to the university. And a lot of times both are trying to get there as fast as possible. And I think that's where the danger lies. I think it's the same in anything in life. Like my first job at Babolat, for example, when I was offered the salary, when I was offered the conditions, it was just like, okay, yeah, I'm in. And there was no further questions. When I got there, and the moving expenses weren't quite what was promised over the phone, and the hours weren't what they said they were going to be, or X, Y, and Z. Then for the next job, you're like, okay, now I can ask these questions. But then the third job, you're like, oh, there's questions from the first one I didn't ask. So I think,
right.
Unfortunately, a little bit of it is. There should be a checklist that all these kids, they ask a certain type of question. Where am I going to play in the lineup? What are practices like? What do you think the solution is to it?
Well, I think exactly what you're saying, and I think we've certainly, talked about the questions that the kids need to be asking and that the parents need to be asking. And, we have UTR as a tool now. And to me, people who aren't using that, that tool on the UTR website where you can type in your own UTR and it'll pull up a list of schools where your UTR would be in the top 6. I think that's such a great starting point for college recruiting, right?
I agree. Yeah.
It's no guarantee. Just because your UTR falls within their top 6 doesn't mean you're necessarily going to play, but at least you're going to be talking to schools where you have a shot. And, it's a great jumping off point, but then to ask the question point blank, where do you see me in your lineup? Now, I will say, Matt, and I think you'll agree with me, not every coach is going to answer that question, honestly.
Correct. No, you're right. I mean, I think we do a good job of that, but and sometimes you're not able to answer it accurately. I mean, there are all different kinds of recruits. I think sometimes a kid comes in and you're like, all right, in your mind, 100% you're going to play top 3. Like you're number 1 recruit in the country. You're obviously going to come in and play. And then you have another kid who's, on the cusp that they're going to be fighting for that 5-6 spot. I think we always tell them that, you're probably going to be around, in the mix to fight for a spot, but nothing's guaranteed. You're going to get all the opportunities. You're going to play every single fall event. We're going to see how you do in practice against the other girls. And, if you're winning matches and it's clear that you belong in the lineup, you're going to be in the lineup. But I don't know if that happens at every place or whatnot. But it is something that these kids just need to do their research on. If they need to look, are all 8 girls playing in the lineup every year? Are they moving things around? Is it just 6 girls playing? Is it, is it more seniors that are playing in the lineup each year, or is he allowing freshmen to get in, or what's going on? But I don't know if there's an exact science to it, but these kids do. My advice for a lot of these kids who do want to play, and they want to play every week, would be to go to a school where you're going to play in the top 3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I were,
I was going to say, because then that even if the coach gets some star recruit, it's not going to knock you out of the lineup.
Correct. I mean, if you're really wanting to play matches each week and you want to get better, and the only way to get better is by playing in competition. I mean, you could practice as much as you want with the best players, but the only way you're going to, get in those real match situations and handle the nerves and compete under pressure is competing under pressure. And I think kids need to be realistic with themselves. I need to get to a place where I'm going to be top 3 and I'm going to get matches every single week, because it's hard. And once you're at a place, let's say you go to a place where you think you're going to play 5 or 6, and your freshman year, you are 7-8 and you don't play 1 match. Everyone else on the team is playing 30 matches and you're watching. It's really hard to ever come back from that.
Right.
First of all, like, just to feel comfortable in a match situation, it's very hard after taking a year off from not doing it. And I think these kids need to think about that going in. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the stats of if you weren't in the lineup your freshman year, your chances
right.
of being in the lineup sophomore, junior, senior year are slim to none. And, correct. People, I think, don't want to look at the numbers, but the numbers don't lie. I mean, the numbers
right.
they are fact. And I think it's really important to look at that. I also wonder about, like, the summer before coming in as a freshman. I know that some programs are really good about sending out, what they expect of the incoming freshman. Right. This is what we want you to be doing. This is how many matches you should get in. This is what you should be doing in the gym or on the track. And, but not every program does that. And that's another one of those things that I feel like if the recruits ask for that information and they don't get it from the coach, that's a red flag to me that,
you're right.
That something's off. Or if the coach says, oh, you just keep doing what you're doing, you're looking great. That's another red flag, because as you and I were talking offline, some of these kids get to school freshman year and they are just in total shock at the intensity of the workouts on the court and off the court. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was right there as well. I was shocked with how intense everything was. With, first of all, the amount of hours. 20 hours doesn't seem like a lot, but at that intensity, it definitely is. And when you put, being away from home and worrying about your own studies, your own, transit to and from places, cooking some of your own meals, all of that, it adds a lot. But for us, in terms of the training regimen, I think we're very open with our players coming in. We tell them exactly kind of our weekly schedule. And most kids do ask that, what does your typical week look like? And we tell them. And when we get kids here on visits, they do meet with our strength coach. He goes over, everything they do. He does send home stuff for them when they do commit, and they come for this before they come, stuff that they could do in the summer and all of that. So that information's out there. But I do, and even we have kids come in and they watch our team work out, and they'll sit through the whole hour workout and see the intensity of it, and they'll watch practice, and I think that's an important part of it, because a lot of the kids get here, and even the kids coming, we'll talk about. I remember at Oklahoma State, we had a girl come in who was 800 WTA and a professional tennis player in her mind. And, she was like, oh, I've been working so hard back home. I'm going to be ready when I come in. And, the first month she looked exhausted after every single practice and every single workout. And she's like, I thought I was doing everything, like a pro. And then I come here and it's completely different. So I don't know if I've gone on the tangent, but I do think that, I don't know. I think in general in the recruiting process, we as coaches need to be a lot more direct. We need to not tell these kids how great they are and kind of tell them the reality that when they get here, that it's not over once they get here, that it's just the beginning, and it's going to be very hard, and they're going to have a lot of commitment, and there's, they're going to be held accountable, and it's not easy chasing after a dream and chasing after a goal. Like you're going to have to put in a lot of hard work, and it's not just fun. And I think a lot of kids aren't completely ready for that when they get to school.
Right. And now that we've got this new ITF World Tennis Tour, and I mean, at Duke, you guys definitely get players that are looking to take their tennis beyond college.
Right.
I know it's new, and I know we're all still trying to figure out the impact that it's going to have, but what are you hearing so far on the women's side? Because we hear, I mean, there have been a lot of the male players that have been pretty outspoken about it, but we're not getting as much on the female side. And I'm just wondering what you're hearing as a college coach.
I mean, obviously it's still it's not in the testing period, but in terms of what we're hearing, we don't know the exact, result of it all for us as college coaches and college programs. But I don't know if it's changed things so much. I mean, I think there's still a concern like there was before, when a kid comes to school, are they going to lose certain ranking points by not playing enough? Are they going to get enough, if they do come to school, are they going to be able to play enough tournaments? Are we going to allow that? And I think that's a concern with this before and even now. In my mind, one of the things that the ITF Transition Tour has done will cause more kids to play junior tennis events, to play the Grand Slams and play the ITF Junior Tour, because a lot of kids were just kind of foregoing that and playing pro right away. But with a certain amount of spots in these events for top 100 junior players, I think it gives them that gap to play junior tennis and then have that ranking be used for another year. I mean, in my philosophy has always been like, if you're top 200 in the world before school, then you should probably go on tour and give it a shot. If you're not, I think you can develop in college, and there's probably a reason you're not there yet. But I think a lot of these kids don't. In my mind, if you're gonna be a top 100 player in the world and make a living playing pro tennis, eventually you need to get to a certain level, and it's not going to matter whether you go to college or not. If you go to college, you can become if you're going to get to that level, and even if it's after your freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, whatever, if you're at that level, a college coach would be crazy to say, I really think you should come back. It's going to be beneficial to you if it wasn't. If you're ready to play in the slams and win, by all means go out there and do it. I think a lot of some kids coming up are delusional to the fact that it's very hard out there, and they need a lot of improvements, and they need to improve physically and mentally and work on things. And I think college gives you the perfect background to do, or the perfect opportunity to do that. I mean, the resources are all here. I just hope kids see that. But back to your question, I have no idea what the transition tour will be like.
That was a long way of saying I have no idea.
I mean, I hope kids come to school still. I know there's a lot of college coaches that think it's going to hurt us and hurt the level. I mean, in the short term on the men's side, I don't think it has. I mean, there's a ton of top 300, 400, 500 players in the world currently in school. But who knows? I mean, I think more. Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, so one of the conversations I've had recently is about this whole idea of the college players taking time to go play professional events during the school year. And Typically that happens in the fall, but we see it happening more and more in the spring now too. What are your thoughts on that as a coach when one of your team members says, hey, I'm going to miss practice this week, or I'm going to miss 3 dual matches this week because I'm going to play this pro event in, South America?
Yeah. I mean, for us, so we have a player right now, Matt Manasse, who played, and Kelly Chen also played pro events in the fall, mixed with college events, as well. And, I think it was beneficial, for both of them to see where they're at. And for us, we don't let anyone in the spring play pro events. It's not something that we do. I mean, we want them to play every single. It's a dual match season. You're supposed to be here for your team, and I think that's kind of our philosophy on it, and how we've treated it so far. In terms of seeing it at other programs, I mean, I don't know if I can't really comment on it. I mean, I know like Wake Forest last year allowed guys to go play pro events during the year, and it was kind of understood that, if they dropped a match because of it or whatever, that it was okay because their long-term goal was to win a championship, and hopefully that would get them there, and it did. So I can't say that's wrong either. But my personal philosophy is that if you're going to come to school and you want to play for the team and you're going to give it all for trying to win a title, or, if making Sweet 16 is your goal or whatever it may be, that you play for the team and you're there for the team, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah. And is that a question that a recruit would ask ahead of time?
Yes. I think, especially nowadays, I mean, a lot of programs are offering, come to school for 1 year, and if you decide to go pro, we'll honor scholarship for whenever you come back. And I think a lot of the pro tournament questions are asked ahead of time, and the answers are given in writing. And I definitely think those questions are asked.
Interesting. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left, Matt. So okay. I want to just make sure we cover everything that you wanted to cover, because this whole conversation came about after some Twitter back and forth and texting back and forth. And, I was really excited that you wanted to come on the podcast and talk to the parents out there. As a college coach yourself, as a former collegiate player, I think, your insights are really very helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we've definitely talked a lot. I'm happy to talk about any other questions you may have. I think we covered a lot of good ground, and any parent that's listening, if obviously I'm on Twitter, my email is out there. So if they ever have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any of them. That's for sure.
Great. And I'll put links to that in the show notes on parentingaces.com. Okay. So those of you guys listening that have questions for Matt, you'll be able to just click and email him or tweet at him. I guess where I'd like to finish up this conversation, Matt, is this whole idea of getting recruiting right and, positioning yourself as a prospective student athlete to make the best choice of schools as a freshman. So you don't have to go through the stress of transferring. And I can tell you as a parent, having a child that went through the stress of transferring is no picnic on this side either.
Right.
And I mean, besides the financial stress of it, and the logistical stress and academic stress, and, there's just a lot that goes into transferring. It's not just a matter of saying, I'm not happy here, I'm going to try going there next year.
Right. I think to think about it again, I think one problem in I don't know if it's in tennis or in every other sport as well. I think these kids want to go to a certain academic school or school in general that, especially the American kids, that meet, what their parents have in mind, for them academically and fitting up to a certain standard. But and sometimes, they pick school X because they really want to go there, but maybe the coach there isn't right for them. And I think they really need to realize that tennis is going to be, if tennis is their main priority, and that's going to be something that, takes up a lot of their time and might, have a lot to do with their happiness during their 4 years, they really need to make sure that the coach that they're going to and the team that they're joining and all of this stuff is kind of more important than the school. And I think that's where a lot of kids fall short.
But the problem is coaches move. I mean, you've moved, right?
That as well, for sure.
And that's a big issue, and you have no idea. I mean, that's exactly what happened with my son. He committed, knowing that the head coach was this person and the assistant coaches were these people, and he loved the assistants, and lo and behold, they both left the summer before he started his freshman year. So, this stuff happens all the time.
For sure. I mean, I think obviously going somewhere where you're more comfortable with the head coach would be a place to start, just because obviously assistants do come and go a little bit more than the head coach. But it obviously isn't an exact science. Obviously being comfortable with the teammates too. I mean, I remember on my recruiting trip to SC, most of the guys I hung out with on their recruiting trip weren't there when I got there. There were a lot of seniors that actually graduated, so it was kind of a completely new dynamic once I entered. So that's a huge part of it too, making sure that you're comfortable with the players on the team and that you can see yourself having meaningful relationships and friendships with those people, because they're the ones you're going to spend most of your time with. And obviously, kids that may or may not feel comfortable being close to home, if that's something that's important to you, then you need to factor that in as well, and make sure that you have a support system around you that you feel that you can thrive in. And it's definitely something to be aware of going into it.
And those are questions that you can ask of the existing teammates too,
Sure.
like, I mean, what's the vibe around here? I mean, is this a touchy-feely kind of team where we all hang out together and, go bowling or whatever, play video games after practice? Or is this the kind of group where we're together on the court and then we don't see each other, the rest of the time? And I think that's, you can get some really good information, both from the existing team members and also reaching out to people that did graduate a year or two ahead, to see what they have to say. Because a lot of times the recent graduates will give you much more honest feedback than the current team members.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah. Well, Matt Manasse, it's been awesome talking with you. I'm really glad we connected, and I hope you'll come back. And your team is off to a great start, and I'm looking forward to watching your progress over the course of the spring season. And Great job. I mean, enjoy it.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. And I definitely look forward to coming back at some point. And if anyone has any questions, I'm definitely here to help. So thank you so much again for having me on.
Fantastic. And to my audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you next time on Parenting Aces. I'm Lisa Stone, and you've been listening to the Parenting Aces podcast. For tennis parents, by a tennis parent. If you like what you've heard, I hope you'll share the podcast with your tennis community. For all the information you need to navigate the junior and college tennis journey, be sure to check out ParentingAces.com.